Christmas movies used to tell us something simple. Not loudly, not with spectacle, but quietly, almost gently. Somewhere along the way, that voice got lost, replaced by bigger budgets, faster jokes, louder moments. And yet, the older films still linger, not because they're perfect, but because they seem to understand something deeper about Christmas itself. So what did they know that we forgot? Why do these older stories feel more honest, more human, more real than most holiday films today? These movies weren't trying to impress. They weren't chasing trends. They weren't selling Christmas as a product. They were asking quieter questions about belief, about kindness, about community, about why this season matters at all. Most people remember them as classics. Very few stop to ask why they worked. Because once you look closely, you realize these films weren't just celebrating Christmas, they were protecting it.
And somewhere in this list is the reason the holiday still means something, even now.
Number 5. Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, 1964. At first glance, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer looks like the simplest kind of Christmas story. A song turned into a TV special, bright colours, friendly voices, a lesson so obvious it almost feels childish. But that simplicity is exactly why it understood Christmas better than many films today ever could. This story isn't about winning, it's about belonging. Rudolph doesn't set out to prove anything, he just wants a place where he isn't treated as a mistake. And Christmas, in its purest form, has always been about that moment. The moment when the excluded are invited in, when the misfits finally feel seen. As adults, it becomes clear how deliberately restrained the film is. There are no grand speeches about acceptance, no dramatic transformations. The lesson isn't shouted, it's shown quietly, through absence, through loneliness.
Through the island of misfit toys, a place filled with characters who are perfectly fine, yet unwanted because they don't fit an expectation. Christmas here isn't about perfection, it's about compassion for what doesn't fit neatly. What makes Rudolph feel wiser than modern holiday films is its honesty. It doesn't pretend that kindness is automatic, it acknowledges that exclusion exists, even during the season meant to erase it. And it suggests that the true spirit of Christmas isn't found in celebration, but in correction. In the choice to stop pushing people aside simply because they're inconvenient. The glowing nose isn't the miracle. The miracle is the moment the world makes room for someone it once rejected. That's what Rudolph understood. Christmas isn't about fixing people, it's about widening the circle. And if this story shows us that Christmas begins with acceptance, the next one asks an even harder question. What happens when belief itself is put on trial? Number 4. Miracle on 34th Street, 1994.
Miracle on 34th Street doesn't try to convince us that Santa Claus is real. That's the mistake most people make when they remember it. What this film actually asks is something far more uncomfortable. What happens when belief is no longer allowed to exist unless it can be proven? At the center of the story isn't magic, but skepticism. Adults who are polite, rational, well-intentioned, and emotionally closed. Susan isn't raised to believe in Santa because belief in this world is treated as irresponsible. Christmas becomes something you manage, explain, and control, not something you feel. As kids, the courtroom scenes felt strange and slow. As adults, they feel painfully familiar. A system demanding evidence for something that was never meant to be quantified. Logic interrogating wonder. Efficiency standing trial against hope. The film understands that modern society doesn't destroy belief through cruelty, it erodes it through reasonableness.
As an adult, your attention shifts to the quieter moments.
Scott missing important days. Scott being judged as irresponsible. Scott watching his son slowly slip away. Not physically, but emotionally. The film never says it outright, but the anxiety is there in every scene. The fear that love alone isn't enough when time, custody, and stability are no longer on your side. What makes the story darker now is how realistic it feels. Scott doesn't magically become a better father overnight. He stumbles, he misunderstands, he overcompensates. Becoming Santa doesn't fix the divorce. It doesn't erase the tension between adults. It simply gives Scott one thing he desperately needs, a purpose that his son can believe in, even when the adults can't agree. Christmas in this film becomes a battleground of values, belief versus logic, imagination versus control, and the child is stuck in the middle, forced to choose which version of reality feels safer.
Number 3. A Charlie Brown Christmas, 1965. A Charlie Brown Christmas barely feels like a movie. There's no spectacle, no big lesson delivered with swelling music, no moment designed to impress. And that's exactly why it understands Christmas better than almost anything that came after it. Charlie Brown isn't searching for gifts or miracles, he's searching for meaning. Surrounded by noise, decorations, and performance, he feels empty. Something about the season feels wrong, but he can't explain why. As a child, this confusion feels vague. As an adult, it feels painfully precise. Because this film recognizes a truth most holiday movies avoid. Christmas can feel lonely when it becomes a show. The world around Charlie Brown is obsessed with appearances. Dancing, decorations, competitions. Everything is louder than it needs to be. And in the middle of it all stands a small, crooked tree, fragile, overlooked, and quietly honest. The film doesn't frame this as symbolism with a spotlight. It trusts the audience to feel it. That restraint is rare, especially today. What makes this story timeless is its refusal to sell Christmas as excitement. Instead, it frames Christmas as stillness, as sincerity, as the courage to strip away performance and sit with something small and imperfect. Linus's speech isn't triumphant, it's calm, unadorned, almost hesitant. And that's the point. Christmas doesn't demand attention, it asks for presence. Modern holiday films often confuse stimulation with meaning. A Charlie Brown Christmas knew better. It understood that when everything becomes louder, the most important things grow quieter. And that Christmas isn't found in what we add, but in what we're willing to remove. If this film quietly dismantles the commercialization of the holiday, the next one explores something even more fragile. The moment when belief becomes a choice, not a given.
Number 2. Home Alone, 1990. When we were kids, Home Alone felt like the ultimate Christmas fantasy. No parents, no rules, total freedom. Kevin McAllister wasn't scared, he was empowered. He ate junk food, watched forbidden movies, and turned his house into a playground of imagination. It felt funny, exciting, and strangely comforting. But growing up reshapes this film in a way that's impossible to ignore. Because beneath the comedy, Home Alone is a story about abandonment and the quiet fear of being forgotten. Kevin isn't just left alone by accident, he's emotionally dismissed long before his family leaves the house. He's talked over, blamed, treated as a problem instead of a child. So when he wishes his family would disappear, the film delivers that wish in the most literal and unsettling way possible. As a kid, that feels empowering. As an adult, it feels tragic. Watching the empty house scenes now hits differently. The silence lingers longer, the rooms feel too big. The joy of independence slowly gives way to unease. Kevin's bravado isn't confidence, it's survival. He doesn't celebrate being alone, he adapts to it. And that distinction matters more with age. The film cleverly hides this loneliness behind slapstick violence and cartoon logic. The traps distract us, the laughs come fast, but in the quieter moments, Kevin eating dinner alone, walking through the snowy streets, sitting in a church on Christmas Eve, the mask slips. The movie allows space for fear, for vulnerability, for the realization that being left behind, even unintentionally, leaves marks. The encounter with the old man in the church becomes the emotional core of the film. Two people separated from their families in different ways, finding comfort in shared loneliness. As children, we barely notice the weight of that conversation. As adults, it becomes the heart of the story. It's not about burglars or booby traps, it's about connection, about forgiveness. Number 1. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946. At its core, It's a Wonderful Life isn't about angels, miracles, or Christmas Eve snow. It's about something far less cinematic and far more essential: community. George Bailey doesn't save the world. He doesn't change history. He never becomes extraordinary in the way movies usually define it. He simply stays. He shows up. He helps when no one is watching. And for most of his life, that choice feels invisible, unrewarded, even foolish. But this film understands something modern Christmas movies often miss: that the spirit of Christmas doesn't live in belief alone. It lives in connection.
What makes this story timeless is how unsentimental it is about goodness. George's life is hard. His sacrifices cost him deeply. Christmas doesn't magically erase that pain. Instead, the film reframes it. It shows that meaning isn't found in what you achieve, but in the lives you quietly shape.
The strange, silent moments between destinations. The film is filled with unease disguised as beauty. Characters appear, guide, then vanish. Rules are unclear. Consequences feel permanent. This isn't a cozy Christmas ride. It's a threshold between innocence and acceptance. The most haunting element isn't the North Pole. It's the bell. The idea that belief fades quietly, that one day, without warning, you stop hearing it. And once it's gone, it doesn't come back easily. The film never presents disbelief as failure, it presents it as inevitable, a cost of growing up. And that's what makes it hurt. Watching this now, the fear isn't that Santa isn't real. The fear is that wonder is temporary, that joy becomes memory, that magic becomes something we explain away to survive. The Polar Express feels darker now because it understands something we rarely admit, that adulthood isn't about learning the truth, it's about deciding what parts of the truth we're willing to lose.
Maybe these movies didn't understand Christmas better because they were made in a different time. Maybe they understood it because they asked different questions. They weren't trying to sell wonder, they were trying to protect it. Belief, kindness, community. The quiet things that don't survive without care. So if these stories still feel truer than what we see today, it might not be because Christmas has changed. It might be because we have. And that leaves one thought hanging in the air. If this is what Christmas once meant, what else did we quietly leave behind without noticing?